What happened here, August 16, 1920? These are the Polo Grounds Apartments between West 155th Street, Frederick Douglass Boulevard, and Harlem River Drive in Washington Heights, New York City. It is the site of the Polo Grounds Stadium, home to many New York sports teams, including baseball's New York Giants and the New York Yankees, and tragically, where Major League Baseball experienced its only game-related fatality when Cleveland Indians shortstop Ray Chapman was struck in the head by a fastball on August 16, 1920. He died from brain trauma early the next morning. Raymond Johnson Chapman was born on January 15, 1891, outside Beaver Dam, Kentucky. He lived there until he was 14, when his family moved 150 miles west to Herrin, Illinois. Chapman played his first major league game for the Cleveland Indians on August 30, 1912. He was 21 years old. He became the everyday starting shortstop and played his first full season in 1913. Known for laughing, pranking, and breaking out in songs with teammates in the dugout and train rides as they traveled between cities, he would be remembered as one of the most popular persons in Cleveland, Ohio, as well as one of the most well-liked ball players in Major League Baseball. In that first full season of 1913, Chappie, as his teammates called him, proved himself a selfless ball player by leading the league in sacrifice hits with 45. He would lead in sacrifice hits again in 1917 and 1919. His 67 sacrifice hits in 1917 is still a major league record over 100 years later. Even more impressive, while giving himself up as an out to sacrifice a runner, he still managed to steal 52 bases in that record-breaking 1917 season. In 1918, he led the American League in runs and walks, reaching 84 in each category. The star shortstop was a major factor in Cleveland's 1918 and 1919 second-place finishes in the American League. Certainly, his girlfriend Katie Daly and her wealthy father were impressed as Ray and Katie married after the 1919 season. In those days, it was common for ball players to take off-season jobs, and at the time he was working for Katie's wealthy father. Working in Cleveland full-time meant Chapman could spend more time with his new bride and start a family instead of traveling by train to play baseball most of the year. Chapman was considering retiring from baseball after the 1919 season. However, the Indians had finished in second place for the second year in a row. His good friend and future Hall of Famer, Tris Speaker, had taken over manager duties halfway through the 1919 season and was returning as a player-manager in 1920, expecting to win Cleveland's first championship. Speaker requested Chapman return for the 1920 season, as they had no chance to win it without him. Chapman agreed to play, and Tris Speaker was glad he did, as Chapman was having one of his best seasons and keeping the Cleveland Indians in first place halfway through August. Chapman was having a good year at home, too. Not only did he and Katie marry, but she was now pregnant. Ray Chapman is going to be a father. On August 16, 1920, the Cleveland Indians were in first place by a half game over the White Sox, and 1.5 games ahead of that day's opponent, the New York Yankees. New York City reached 88 degrees that day, but the air was humid with a gray overcast sky and a light rain that would factor in the tragedy to come. 21,000 fans attended the Polo Grounds that day, not including the Yankee fans standing in the rain watching from Coogan's Bluff and hoping to see their New York Yankees pull into a second-place tie and maybe see a home run from their young phenom, Babe Ruth. It would be a battle of the spitballers, which was legal at the time and also a factor in Chapman's death. Steve Kowaliski took the mound for the Cleveland Indians, and Yankees ace and submarine spitballer Carl Mays for New York. Like Chapman, Mays was born in Kentucky in a small town named Liberty, only 100 miles away from Chapman's birthplace in Beaver Dam. Chapman was the second hitter in the Cleveland lineup, so would bat the first inning. In his first trip to bat, he did what he was known for and after 100 years remains in the top 10 all-time for, and that is to sacrifice himself by bunting his teammate to second base. His second at-bat came in the third inning, with Cleveland winning 1-0 and a light rain falling. By now the ground would be muddy and the ball would be without its bright white shine, having been covered in the mud and tobacco spit by both Mays and Kowaliski. Many players in this era juiced the ball with anything they thought would help them to control or spin it. Often it was tobacco spit or juice, but they would also scuff it in the dirt or even cut the ball in their spikes if they had to. The mud and tobacco spit turned the ball brown or black, making it difficult for players to see. And Carl Mays, having injured his arm in the minor leagues, found he could pitch effectively in a near underhand motion referred to as submarine. This was an uncommon delivery and awkward for a batter to see the ball as it left his hand from near the ground and rose to the strike zone. Having a Polo Grounds soil-covered ball flying at near 90 miles per hour would increase the difficulty in being able to pick up the ball as it left May's hand. Still, Chapman managed to make contact, but grounded into a double play. The next time up for Chapman would come with the Indians winning 3-0. He was the first batter in the top of the 5th inning. With the ball dirtier, the sky still overcast, with the light rain falling, this would be Ray Chapman's final at-bat on August 16, 1920. The first pitch from Carl Mays was a strike. The second, a ball. The third, by some accounts, a purposeful brushback pitch. Others say it was a curveball meant to hit Chapman. Mays says it was a fastball that got away. As the ball continued to rise high and inside, Chapman appeared to lean away from the ball, but it continued right toward him, striking him on the head. With no helmet to soften the blow, it sounded and looked to Mays like the ball hit the bat as it bounced back to the infield between Yankee third baseman Aaron Ward and Carl Mays himself, where Mays fielded the ball and threw to first base. Meanwhile, Chapman had collapsed in the batter's box, where umpire Tom Connolly immediately called for a doctor from the stands. Chapman managed to stand up as Connolly and teammates helped him to his feet. True to his kind demeanor, he told Connolly and his teammates to let Carl Mays know he'd be fine, and then asked to have his wife phoned, who remained home in Cleveland. "I'm all right. Tell Mays not to worry. Ring Katie's ring." Those were his last words before he again collapsed on the field, this time unconscious. His teammates picked him up and carried him to the clubhouse, then rushed him less than a mile from the Polo Grounds to 455 West 163rd Street in Washington Heights, which at the time was St. Lawrence Hospital, where doctors would operate on Chapman and find part of his broken skull was pressing against his brain. Katie was called and headed to New York City from Cleveland as soon as possible. Not realizing the gravity of Chapman's injury, the game continued with future Hall of Famer Joe Sewell replacing Chapman at shortstop. Cleveland scored one more much-needed run as the Yankees scored 3 runs in the bottom of the 9th, and Cleveland hung on to win 4-3. The next morning, Katie arrived at St. Lawrence Hospital at about 10 a.m. to learn that her new husband and the father of her unborn baby had passed away 6 hours earlier. Their daughter, Ray Marie, was born the following February. 8 years later in Los Angeles, Katie died from poisoning. It's unknown if by accident or suicide. 1 year later, their 8-year-old daughter, Ray Marie, contracted measles and also died. After having learned of their teammate's death the next morning on August 17, that day's game between the Indians and the Yankees was canceled, but they played the next day and the makeup game on Thursday. Cleveland hung on to their first-place lead to win the American League Championship and went on to beat Brooklyn to win the World Series in Cleveland. Even though it could not be certain if a muddy tobacco-juice spitball prevented Ray Chapman from reacting in time to dodge it, immediately after the 1920 season, many rule changes were made to make batting safer, including allowing only 2 spitballers per team, if they had them, and no new players being allowed to throw a spitball, cut, or alter the ball. Not allowed to throw another spitball was Carl Mays. Stan Kowalski, however, threw spitballs for another 8 years. As for helmets, nothing changed as the debate would carry on for decades. But it was Ray Chapman's death at the Polo Grounds being a main reason for Major League Baseball finally, 50 years later in 1971, to require batting helmets. The ear flap was later added, and some players have been wearing face guards. The final Major League game at the Polo Grounds was played on September 18, 1963. It was demolished the following spring. Several 30-story apartment buildings were erected in its place. They are called the Polo Grounds Towers. The Polo Grounds ballpark will be remembered for many things, including Bobby Thompson's shot heard around the world on October 3, 1951, and Willie Mays' The Catch September 29, 1954. But no event had an impact on the safety evolution of baseball more than that of Ray Chapman's death on that fateful day on August 16, 1920. If you would like to see more What Happened Here videos, please support the channel by liking and sharing the video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you.